All right, had a little breakfast for dinner, some hot cakes, some nice butter, some tasty syrup, a little bacon, just to get my mind right here to cover a rather unexciting second round of the NFL playoffs here as we head into our Final Four this upcoming weekend. So a little behind the eight ball here, but I thought it was worth sharing my thoughts here. Chiefs knock off the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-20. Patrick Mahomes was rolled up in the second quarter, busted his ankle. Looked like his ankle was a high, high ankle sprain. There we go. I can get the injury out here. He looked like he was in pretty big pain. Initially there, he played out the rest of the drive before coming off to finish the rest of the quarter on the bench there, and came back in the second half. So he did have 37-year-old Chad Henne, who hasn't seen meaningful snaps in several years, come in and lead a couple drives, one of them for a score, but he was averaging less than 4 yards per passing attempt. So just a really conservative drive. He was able to put together there 3.3 yards per attempt, and they were able to keep the ball moving there. Isaiah Panko, I believe is how it's pronounced there, the running back, Jerick McKinnon as well, getting a few carries to help lead a scoring drive there, to at least be a placeholder so that Mahomes didn't come in at a deficit, as the Chiefs held a 17-10 lead at the half there. Must have given him a nice little shot or something to kind of help with that pain a little bit, so he was able to come out in the second half ready to roll and finish out the game. Line did a decent job protecting him, and he also got the ball out quickly, of course. It completely changed the landscape of the game moving forward when the offense was out there. He got the ball to Kelce, 17 targets, 14 catches for Kelce, only 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the number one weapon out there, obviously, it'll be interesting to see moving forward into this week's game if they can find some other solution to getting another threat open out there. Obviously, with the loss of Tyreek Hill this season, they've been able to certainly make things work, but if they start to suffer problems here, whether it's this week or in the Super Bowl, you have to wonder if it's because of a lack of threats on offense there. Kadarius Toney had 5 catches for 36 yards, a couple for Juju. Vantless Scantling had a 6-yard reception. Just wasn't good. Wasn't good outside of Kelce there, although he was also an obvious target in getting the ball out quickly. But the Jags just weren't able to cover him either. They brought a lot of pressure, as you would try to do on a hobbled quarterback. And this really brought a lot of PTSD of Caleb Williams' injury in the USC-Tulane game there. Or USC-Utah game, rather, when he was injured in the Pac-12 championship game, and how it changed the dynamics. He obviously wasn't able to move around in the pocket as well, and it just changed what they were able to do on offense. Had to get the ball out quicker, defenses loading up, so it just changes a lot of the dynamics for an offense when the quarterback is really banged up. So it's going to maybe look a little bit different against the Bengals, but you have to wonder what that injury is going to do, even with a nice shot before the game moving forward into this week. Chiefs able to get a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence. He wasn't throwing the ball downfield a lot until he was behind by quite a bit there. So have to wonder about some of the decisions there and play calls early. They actually lost Christian Kirk in the fourth quarter in the last 4 or 5 minutes there when they really needed him the most, driving the field down a touchdown late, which is how they ended up losing this game. Shouldn't have gotten to that point. Just really didn't take advantage of Henne being in the game early, again, being down at halftime, and just not really questionable play calls earlier, but allowing pressure on Lawrence for quite a while there, not moving him out of the pocket. It's just a long time watching the game and thinking, man, Kansas City's got a real threatening pass rush there. And as the game went on, Lawrence was able to get out a little bit and start to look like the threat that he can really be. So you have to wonder if next season, if they're going to be favorites to win the AFC South division. It certainly seems like they'd be favored over, obviously, the Texans and the Colts at the moment, probably the Titans, and this just looks like a really good team. Lawrence obviously suffering from a lot of issues of his own demise. Early in the Chargers game, they were able to overcome maybe a couple things that could have been sorted out earlier in this game, but just a real threat that could have advanced further in the postseason. Of course, maybe Mahomes would have had a further handle on this game moving forward as well if he wasn't in a different circumstance as well. So maybe they would have covered the pretty good size spread a little bit more comfortably, but they do manage to pull it out after a drive stalls late for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they were pretty close there. The Eagles crushed the Giants 38-7. Really not that unexpected in the grand scheme. The Giants, the way the game plan was really put together in the first round there against the Vikings. There we go. Who could forget that game? And it's just a great game plan put together there, isolating the weapons, giving Kirk what he could hit underneath, and being able to really slow down and mute the explosiveness of that offense and taking advantage of the defense on the other side of the ball. But that was not the case against the Eagles, who had already blown them out once earlier in the year. And then they played again, of course, at the end of the season with a number of starters resting, so you couldn't take a lot from that sample size. But it was another thumping here. Jalen Hurts said he wasn't 100% before this game and was still really banged up. Don't know if that was just downplaying a little bit, but he certainly had no problems here as the Eagles just mopped him up. The offensive line crushed them. 268 yards rushing, 9.8 yards per carry for Gainwell, 5.3 each for Sanders and Scott, as the entire backfield, got into the backfield of the Eagles there, got into the secondary, and broke off some big runs there. No problems for the Eagles at all, beating the Giants. Not a lot of notes on this one at all. The San Francisco 49ers, 19-12 over the Cowboys. Hope you took the under on this one. The Cowboys just really mucked this up at the end. Dak certainly had some issues here. I think he certainly takes too much criticism for not being a decent quarterback, and I just don't think that's true. But the final drive was really a cluster. Dalton Schultz catches a ball going backwards out of bounds, and you need to really show progression forwards with intent to go out of bounds to stop the clock. So the fact that he backpedals or falls out of bounds making a catch costs them 30 seconds on a running clock. They're 20 to 30 seconds towards the end there, so just costs them a whole bunch of time. The final play, which you can of course see clips of if you haven't already, with Zeke Elliott getting crushed on a block. One offensive lineman snapping the ball, some weird formation. Looks like it's set up for a bunch of laterals where it doesn't even get off because the poor design of the play and just a joke of a setup, really. But a waste of time, a waste of design, just a whole cluster at the end of the game there, driving for what could have been a game-winning score, potentially. Tony Pollard, a big weapon for them, obviously hurt in the first half, did not return. Mahler, the kicker, had an extra point blocked, after missing 5 in the first playoff game, of course, against the Buccaneers. 7 straight divisional round playoff losses now, the most in NFL history. So stand the Cowboys right this moment. So not all of it is on Dak's shoulders, however. I still remember Dak back at Mississippi State in 2013 or 14 when he led that 10-win team to that high watermark in the SEC, 6-2 in conference play, I believe they were. A lot of talent on that team, a great offense there. And the following year, he stayed. He was a senior, his 4th year as a starter, I believe. And 9 offensive starters were gone. This is all off the top of my head. I believe 9 starters left. And they were a win or 2 worse. They were much worse in conference play. And overall, were looked at as taking a big step back. Yet all his production went up despite the record and a lot of the returning players being gone, having different folks around him. His game continued to elevate. And I always wondered why he went so much later in the draft. It always seemed like he'd still be a productive player after his time in college. And throughout all his years in the NFL here now, 6, 7, 8 years now, I'm still not sure that they've had a competent coaching staff and a real good front office that's made good signings in places that are critical and players that are critical and made key investments. This team has still accomplished more than 80% of the league. But in order to really push that ceiling into a Super Bowl, better decisions need to be made at key times, like a possible game-winning drive in this particular series. Some better signings in key places, like not re-signing Dak and immediately having someone like Tony Pollard outperform him for the past every single year of that contract that Zeke has been on. The whole wide receiver series of events we've had going on there. Jerry Jones always taking the spotlight and drawing a lot of attention, I think doesn't help in the locker room. And it just seems like that a little bit of a culture change and a wise investment in even one more key playmaker here or there on either side of the ball and smart coaching decisions when it really matters is what is needed to really push this team. But only one team wins it every year. Just I would not put it on Dak's shoulders. Brock Purdy didn't play very well in this game, but he helped the 49ers escape. You'd have to still guess, with one more game still to go, that he'd be maybe the front runner still for the job next season. Garoppolo is questionable to play, I guess, on Saturday here. We'll get to that in just a moment. Cincinnati beat Buffalo in the snow 27-10. This really wasn't even close. Speaking of playmakers, of course, they signed Von Miller in the offseason, and his injury back in December and continuing absence has been noticeably missed. But Buffalo, again, missing a couple playmakers on either side of the ball that could really make a difference in this game. And just a number of issues for Josh Allen in key positions. Just can't seem to quite get it done. A lot of teams in a tight race here, and they just can't seem to quite get there. So down all three offensive linemen, the Bengals, it just doesn't matter who's protecting for Burrow, it seems like. Second year in a row, they're headed to Arrowhead for an AFC championship game with a questionable group there. It's kind of arguable at this point. Again, an offensive line should matter, but 5.3 yards per carry for Joe Mixon. Burrow was only sacked one time, and he's kind of getting familiar with playing behind a revolving door of offensive linemen there. And they just didn't feel threatened by the pass rush of the Bills. And again, Von Miller is supposed to help them solve that. But even if he was the on that side of the ball, is just having him enough? I don't know. I think the Bills are going to have to reload with several guys on that side of the ball in this offseason. Stephon Diggs was yelling at Josh Allen on the sidelines. That seems like a real problem since he's supposed to be the primary offensive weapon there for Buffalo. Nothing going on the ground. And certainly I'm not the only one saying, how can this be a Super Bowl caliber team without a difference maker on the ground? And it doesn't really matter until it matters. Yes, Josh Allen is a main ball carrier in the red zone. Yes, he's very effective with his legs. Yes, you don't need to pay for a very expensive running back or need one of these top elite kind of guys. But you need at least a collection of talent, someone that's a threat receiving out of the backfield, a good pass blocker, a decent guy between the tackles. If you can't find one running back that can do a little bit of all of it, then you need at least a good couple guys that some of these other top contenders have, like the Chiefs, for example, the 49ers right now. But the Bills just don't have that. Singletary is not a threat. James Cook, who played very sparingly at Georgia in that loaded backfield and now plays sparingly with the Bills, is not that either. And it just seems like they need a threat, someone that the defenses need to game plan for there. 64 yards combined in this game, 3.4 yards combined for carries wise. 2.6 per yards on 5 carries for Cook, and 4.2 yards per carry on 6 handles for Singletary, and the rest went to Josh Allen. But there's nothing threatening there once you get to these last few teams that they have to scheme and worry about. So they just worry about Josh Allen and his threats downfield. And then you get in some real problems when you start to run out of weapons. It's kind of like in the NBA. It's not a problem if you don't have a lot of great shooters or offensive weapons on the floor. So if all 5 guys can't shoot, that's not a real problem. But we saw last year in the NBA Finals, when you are the last 2 teams, and the Boston Celtics have a number of guys that can shoot, and the Warriors, for example, have Draymond Green on the floor, 4 guys that can shoot, 1 guy who can't. Then on defense, the Celtics can go and basically double up on all the other weapons for the Warriors there and leave Draymond alone to shoot, since he doesn't shoot at a very high percentage. Warriors obviously won the finals, so that changes the dimensions a little bit, but that's more because the things they're able to do on the defensive end. And the Bills, as we just discussed, don't have a lot of teeth as far as pass rushing on the defensive side, and that just caused all kinds of problems, and we now see a lot of holes with this roster, not a lot of depth clearly either. So all of a sudden the Buffalo Bills, who are 13-3 this year, look like they have a lot of different pieces they can add and look a long ways away from a Super Bowl at the moment. 5 guys had catches of 15 yards or more, but only 1 receiver finished with more than 50 total receiving yards, and that was the tight end Dawson Knox. The Bengals ended up with the ball at the end of both halves and didn't get to basically complete those drives out, but out of the 7 drives in the game that they did complete, they scored on 5 of them. So just a lot of longer drives, longer plays in this game, and the Bengals really took advantage, and that's how this one played out. So this weekend now, our lineups, our matchups here in the conference championship games. For the 5th year in a row now, the AFC goes through Arrowhead Stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you remember, it goes back 5 years to the overtime game of the Patriots. Went through, didn't give the Chiefs a possession. I believe Tom Brady handed it off a few times, 3, 4, 5 times, powered through the horrible defensive line for the Chiefs en route to scoring a game-winning touchdown and punching a Super Bowl ticket there. Back in 2019. No, that was 2018. 2018-19 season. 2019-20 season, the Chiefs beat the Titans in Arrowhead Stadium there to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl and won there with Mahomes. The back-to-back was in the 2020-21 season where they beat the Buffalo Bills there 38-24, then lost to, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady. Last year, of course, Cincinnati went and beat them 27-24 to go on to the Super Bowl, and this season a rematch again. Can the Bengals, on a series of road trips, make it back to the Super Bowl? You really like their weapons, even with the injuries to the offensive line. You like what they've been able to do on the defensive end as well. Actually, a lot of signs point to them being able to go on the road here and win in Kansas City. That's what I have my wager on right now, although it would be nice to see Patrick Mahomes win his 2nd Super Bowl, quite frankly. If you're hosting 5 straight AFC championship games and you only make the Super Bowl 2 of those 5 appearances and only come away with 1 ring in 5 years, that's not a great sign. That's how you end up like Aaron Rodgers with only 1 Super Bowl ring, despite a very prolific career, and I don't want the same for Patrick Mahomes. Nevertheless, Joe Burrow has looked excellent. This is why you stack up on good receiver depth, and a number 1, his college buddy, of course, there, and Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon has done well, even behind this kind of makeshift offensive line, which seems to be very well coached, regardless of who is in there. Burrow makes smart decisions as well as having a capable arm. He doesn't care about playing on the road. He'll go in there and beat you. The defense on the back end seems to make smart plays in the secondary. Who would have thought Eli Apple is still back there years later? Sometimes I forget he's back there making big plays. Pro Football Focus has Joe Burrow as the only quarterback rated at a 90+ in their grading system in 2021 and 2022. Only guy to finish with that high in both the past 2 seasons. They do have defensive end Trey Henderson rated very highly. DJ Reader, who missed a number of games, as a very high-ranked guy on that defensive line as well, which has been a tremendously high-performing unit compared to last season. Jesse Bates is an alternative for the Pro Bowl, along with the previous 2 I just mentioned. So we have several players on that defense that we didn't necessarily have performing at a high level in previous seasons. On the Chiefs side, you have to be very concerned about what Patrick Mahomes is going through with the injury there, and if they're going to be having problems finding other weapons outside Travis Kelce to throw the football to. Those would be a couple of my top concerns, besides slowing down the very powerful Joe Burrow and that passing attack and all those threats, and having enough corners there. Now, the pass rush is going to be a problem, I think, as well. I think they're going to have all kinds of problems stopping the Bengals, quite frankly. And I don't know that Patrick Mahomes is going to be comfortable back there in the pocket for an entire 4 quarters as things start to wear on him. So it'll be a very good ball game regardless. Eagles and 49ers, of course, in Philly. The line on the game currently, this is for Sunday's game, Bengals Chiefs. That's CBS 6:30. That's the night game. Chiefs favored by a point now, although that's swung around quite a bit based on injury reports and supposed looks at the Patrick Mahomes there, who looked healthier at a press conference, but who knows what they're able to do to accommodate his injury. 47.5 point over under. Niners Eagles is the earlier game, 3 o'clock on Fox. 2.5 point Phillies way. 46.5 point over under. The Eagles getting their first real challenge here in the 49ers. Brock Purdy obviously playing a real defense in the Cowboys last week. He'll get another real challenge here. This will be a really powerful battle in the trenches. That's how it'll probably be played out on both sides, offensive and defensive line, for both of these particular groups. 49ers certainly have the talent to match up with the Eagles. I'm not sure that Brock Purdy is going to be able to exploit the defense on the back end here. So I am leaning with the Eagles here, but this is another game that'll be very interesting with Brock Purdy heading on the road here and to Philly, which is looking like it's going to be just above freezing at 37 degrees at this current moment in time. 35 in Kansas City, so a couple of chillier games. I should note Christian McCaffrey's also had a bit of a calf injury. I don't know if that's going to be lingering or possibly an issue that could be re-aggravated should he play and then have further issues. But that's worth noting as well. But 2 great football games coming up on Sunday. Got to get Saturday off the mind now. They played on Saturday. Sunday in a great doubleheader. So clear your slate. And then we'll have the Super Bowl just a couple of weeks away with Rihanna on the great halftime show. So it'll be exciting. So thanks for listening. We'll catch up on some college basketball soon here. Thank you.